You're listening to Science and Spirituality with Deepak Chopra.
I'm doing today's post with a little bit of hesitation and even trepidation. And I'll tell you why. So let me make some outrageous statements, at least outrageous to theologians and religious people. Number one, God did not create the universe. God did not create the universe. Number two, the biblical version of creation, Genesis, is wrong. Most religious versions of creation are wrong. That's number two. Number three, Richard Dawkins and militant atheists are wrong. Remember, I'm just expressing my opinion. You can agree, disagree, take it or leave it, ridicule, vilify, or praise it, doesn't matter. So, what did I say? God did not create the universe. The biblical version of creation is wrong. Most religious versions of creation are wrong. Richard Dawkins and militant atheists are wrong. And actually, the genesis of the universe is much more interesting than the current scientific version and also the current religious version, which are both wrong. And when I say religious, I mean, organized religion versions. Okay, so when you read the book of Genesis, or you read, some other texts, you come across this idea: God created the universe in the biblical version 7 days. But how could you have days without a sun and a moon and all that, or the stars or the cosmos? So, the days come after. And so it doesn't sound right. Plus, the biblical version suggests that the universe is only a few thousand years old. If you want to read all the arguments against the biblical version, I suggest you read Richard Dawkins. Okay, so I'll tell you why I think Richard Dawkins is also wrong. And once again, just sharing my opinions. So, of course, when we were all babies and we asked the question, where did I come from? And if our parents were religious, they said, God made you, and God made the universe, and God made everything. And then as a child, you always ask, then who made God? And then everybody gets stumped. In a way, Richard Dawkins has used this argument as well. So if there's a creator of the universe, where did the creator come from? And you can go back infinitely asking this question in time. So where Richard, in my opinion, is expressing an old-fashioned atheism from an old-fashioned perspective of understanding creation, or also the atheistic views. Again, just my opinion. But all these arguments are based on a very, I think, outmoded philosophy, outmoded theology, and outmoded religion. So if creation comes from outside of space-time, then there is no beginning to it, and there's no causality to it, okay? And right now, the basic difference between quantum mechanics and classical physics is just this. There's no causality in quantum mechanics. Okay, everything is spontaneous and without cause. Everything is spontaneous and without cause in quantum mechanics. And it works. All the calculations of quantum mechanics are now helping create technology, even though quantum mechanics does not imply causality or even strict determinism. Okay, quantum mechanics applies only possibilities that reside in a transcendent realm. It implies unpredictability. It implies quantum leaps of information and energy, which means discontinuity. And to some of us, it implies self-organization, self-regulation, self-evolution, and total autonomy and spontaneity and uncertainty and creativity. So if you understand that there is a realm of existence which is not perceptual, but the source of perception, which cannot be actually 100% be conceivable, but is the source of all conception, that realm is infinite possibilities, uncertainty principles, spontaneity, quantum leaps or jumps of energy and information implying discontinuity. And if that realm of existence is awareness, then it also operates through attention and intention. So if the transcendent field, unified field, or singularity, or whatever you call it, the infinite formless, is all possibilities and also spontaneous, also governed by the uncertainty principle, also localizes itself through attention and intention, then we have a solution to where the universe came from. A transcendent realm of all possibilities, and possibly self-aware as that transcendent realm, and interacting with itself through attention, intention, creating species-specific experiences or universes that go along in entanglement by the biological organism that is experiencing those universes. Okay, so God did not create the universe. God, as say, a superhero or a superhuman, did not create the universe. That version of God did not create the universe. It's obvious and it stands to common sense. On the other hand, the argument of atheists, particularly militant atheists like Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens and Sam Harris joined the gang and many others, they have a very old-fashioned idea of God, and the God they attack is not really can't be defended. God cannot be defended. So the God they attack cannot be defended. But Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens and the gang, Daniel Dennett, never address. Of course, Dennett does, but he says consciousness explained, which means consciousness explained away. None of these people address the hard problem of consciousness. And when they do, they dismiss it, that we'll find a solution. Basically, that consciousness is a derived form of matter. So once you get into that derived form of matter, then the argument, the observer argument also starts to fail. So I remember Michael Chopra asking me a long time ago. By the way, he's become a good friend, and we are good friends, and so is Leonard Malloy now, and the co-author of Stephen Hawking is a very good friend now. We disagree on a lot of things, but we are friends. So, but I remember Michael asking me, he says, if consciousness creates the universe or the experience of the universe, are you implying that there was no universe before human beings appeared? The universe is 13.8 billion years. Human beings showed up only 200,000 years ago. And we developed the scientific method and these questions and these methodologies only in the last maybe 40,000 years. So how can you say that, you need an observer to create the universe? And, when Michael presented this question to me, maybe 15, 20 years ago, it seemed to make sense because, if the observer is a human body mind looking at the universe, then the observer is obviously not manifesting the universe as the person. He's not manifesting, he or she is not manifesting the universe. That universe that has he or she is seeing has existed before he or she showed up. So how could he or she be manifesting the universe? Well, there's a flaw in that argument. The body mind is not observing the universe. The body mind is actually part of the observation. Only consciousness can observe. Only consciousness can know. Only consciousness can experience. And the body mind and the universe that are being experienced simultaneously are entangled as objects in the subject that we call consciousness. So once you understand that there's only one subject of experience, but its modes of experiencing are infinite. Only one subject of experience, its modes of experience are infinite. Let's take our own body, mind, and universe example. So if you understand the description of morphogenesis in one version of Vedanta, not all versions, one version of Advaita, which is not a religion, which is not even a philosophy, it's a methodology for exploring consciousness. So in that one version of Advaita, Advaita means non-dualism, consciousness first modifies itself as mind. Okay, so consciousness interacts with itself. It knows itself as thoughts, its feelings, as imagination. And let's call that the mind. And then furthermore, the mind differentiates into rationality, which means it becomes the intellect. Furthermore, the intellect creates an identity of itself. We call it the ego. And then from there, magic happens. There's the differentiation of the five senses, and five motor organs, and these project as the experience of space-time, energy, information, and matter. Or we can say the five elements: space, air, fire, water, and earth. Space being matter, or what we call matter, in its vacuum state. Air being what we call matter in its gaseous state. Water in its liquid state, and earth in its matter state. So you see here, consciousness is self-interacting and differentiating into ego, first into mind, into intellect, into ego, into the five senses, into the five motor organs, and through acts of attention and intention, experiencing itself as the body-mind apparatus that is entangled with the experience that that body-mind apparatus caused the universe, in this case, the human universe. In similar ways, other species are entangled with an experience which would be their universe. An insect with 100 eyes, a dragonfly with 30,000 eyes, a snake infrared, insects ultraviolet, owls also, all different universes entangled in a common ecosystem of universes with leaky margins. And so the traditional God did not create the universe. The God that I am trying to explain is much, much, much bigger, much, much, much more mysterious, much, much more ineffable, transcendent, beyond space-time, irreducible, fundamental, spaceless, timeless, causeless, and that formless awareness is everywhere. So it's omnipresent. It is the source of all energy and matter, or we can say the experience of energy and matter. Source of all experience of energy and matter. So we can say omnipotent. And the source of all information that is generated through its own self-interaction, which we can call omniscience. Yes, omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, but on a much grander scale than any religion can describe or has described, or even our current cosmological frameworks, which include things like the Big Bang, which, by the way, no cause can be ascribed to it, which include Planck epoch, 10 to the power of minus 43 seconds, post time zero, where there are no laws of physics, cosmic inflation, where the universe triples in size every trillionth of a trillionth of a trillionth of a second, and then slows down for inexplicable reasons, but precisely fine-tuned for mind, life, and universe and multiverses. Can't explain cosmic inflation, can't explain the Planck epoch, can't explain the source of the Big Bang, can't explain the disparity between the observed value of the cosmological constant and the theoretical value. A lot of things, and can't explain black holes, can't explain not black holes, can't explain dark energy, can't explain dark matter, can't explain most of the universe or what's happening. And there's a standard model, of course, that seems to work for creating technology, but seems to be totally disastrous for explaining the origins of the universe. So current cosmology out, religion out, Dawkins and his gang out, as far as I'm concerned. Does God exist? Yes. God is the ultimate mystery of existence, and God is the mystery of you and me. And God is our highest instinct to know ourselves. God is unimaginable. God is inconceivable. God is incomprehensible. God is infinite. God is formless. God is without cause. And God is real. Everything else is unreal. Only God exists. Everything else is unreal. By unreal means it's a happening in space-time that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Whatever has a beginning also has an end. And every projection of the universe has that beginning, middle, and end. And you and I are part of that entanglement as the impermanent visions of God in infinite modes of imagination, in infinite modes of knowing, in infinite modes of experience, and never ending. So, does God exist? Yes. Did God create the universe? No, God conceived, constructed the notion. That's all you need. Okay, so conceived, constructed the notion, organized that notion into an experience. And that experience was species specific and magically manifested the species-specific experience of that entanglement. The biological organism with its body, mind, and the universe are both objects. The subject is one. The objects are innumerable minds, innumerable modes of knowing, innumerable things known. So God conceives, constructs the notion, governs, and becomes the experience of the universe, and in infinite modes of experience. Much, much, much bigger and much, much, much more grand and much, much, much more omniscience. If there are degrees of omniscience, this is infinite, infinite, infinite modes of omniscience. So infinite modes of omnipotence, infinite modes of omniscience, omnipotence, and omnipresence. Wherever you go, there is God. There is nowhere that God is not. God is not difficult to find. God is impossible to avoid. So reflect on this, and I'm sure I'm going to be criticized, attacked, vilified, whatever, ridiculed for these views. But I have been saying for some time that both religion and science need a reformation. Let me know your thoughts.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, comment, and share. You can also visit deepakchopra.com for upcoming events, news, and books.